What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the show Recap with Mo, where we're getting ready to get into a brand new episode breakdown of Tyler Perry's SISTAS. But before we get into this thing, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss Sisnit that's going down, alright? So the episode we're getting ready to get into is for Season 7, Episode number 16, titled Close to You. Now the synopsis states, Sabrina attempts to plan a baby shower for Karen, and Danni struggles to understand the dynamic between Tiffany and Tony. Meanwhile, Jordan finds himself in harm's way. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this thing. Alright, y'all, so we kicked this episode off where we left off with Tony, Danni, and his ex-wife, right? So in the previous episode, Danni and Tony were about to get into some things, and in walks his ex. Now, Tiffany tells him that the secretary was not at the desk. Obviously, he had sent her home for the day, and, she decided to walk in unannounced and just pop up like Kendrick Lamar did, last week or whatnot. So anyhow, he wants to know on immediate, like, why are you here? Because she was stationed over in Germany and now she's here in Atlanta. So what brings you to the city? Well, she conveys to him that she's actually in the process of being reassigned, that she actually requested, that she have the opportunity to come back to the States or whatnot. And by the way, I'm a major now. So now Tony is sitting over here like, what? For real? Go ahead and dap it up. So they dap up, hug up, and all of this stuff. In the meantime, Danni's sitting over here, she done put her hands out and everything for Tiffany to shake and all of this stuff. Of course, that was ignored. But then all of a sudden, you can dap it up with Tony or whatnot without any hesitation. So I can see her vantage point feeling some type of way about this. And I can also see his vantage point as well, because he's like, look, this is my friend. We decided to be cordial, even though we're no longer together. It didn't work. But I can see from both sides, what it is. So anyhow, moving on from there, Danni reminds Tony that they're supposed to link up later on that night, right? And he was like, oh man, I forgot I told the kids that I was going to take them to the movies. And she was like, dang, like for real? So Tiffany, hearing the conversation, is like, you know what? I could take the kids to the movies. You guys go ahead and do what you had planned or whatnot. And he was like, for real? She was like, yeah. And he says, well, I'll call moms or whatnot. She would like that, And she was like, yeah, you better go ahead and tell her I'm going to come over there and get some of my favorite whatever, whoop, 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 right? So they dapping it up, hugging up and talking about their movie treats and all of this stuff, reminiscing. And I'm like, Dad, go on, for real? Right in front of Danny's face. And Danny's sitting there like, I'm still here. Hey, I'm here, y'all. So anyhow, as Danny's getting ready to leave, as she's walking by Tiffany, she utters something under her voice. And Tiffany's like, what did you say? And Danny's like, oh, well, I just said you're rocking those for tees and something like that, right? And, I honestly feel that, Danni could have kept the comments to herself, definitely with the vibe, feeling a little off, right? It just didn't feel right. So anyhow, from one mess to another, we head over to the law firm where we see Fatima getting a grand chuckle off of Hayden. Hayden is still pissed off about the whole situation that went down between he and Andi with the whole Miss Marie case or whatnot. So, Fatima calls Andi to tell her, like, hey, you missing out on the show. Old boy is heated and she's enjoying every minute of it, right? So anyhow, Andi is actually at this hotel meeting up with Agent Watt at room 404, the whole Atlanta zip code, right? And I liked how they did that. So anyhow, she knocks on the door. Agent Watt comes to the door, already locked and loaded. She comes in and he's like, hey, hurry up and get in. And she was like, what's going on? So he conveys to her that they're taking extra, security measures or whatnot to make sure that they secure the star witnesses, so they don't let this fool get away. So anyhow, she was like, star witness? And he was like, yeah, you. And before he could say Penelope's name, here comes Penelope from behind the wall or whatnot. And Andy's like, Penelope? So anyhow, from there, we'll get back on that in a moment. We head over to see Sabrina, who's, co-planning, the whole baby shower for Karen for her twins or whatnot, along with Pam. So she's waiting on all the sisters to come over to assist her or whatnot, along with Maurice, right? So anyhow, there's a knock on the door and then walks Pam. Now, Pam, when she comes in, she was like, what in the heck is going on? And why on earth am I the first person here, right? So anyhow, when she sits down, she was like, what you got going on? She was like, I know we ain't doing no homemade cakes. And I was like, daggone, they did look a little homemade, right? So she was like, look, just let me handle that. You can do what you're doing over there. I got this side of it, right? So anyhow, Sabrina on the other end is like, okay, whatever. And she's going through this little phase right now. She doesn't know if it's the medication that she's taking that's making her respond the way that she's responding right now. But whatever it is, she's telling people how she feels and she's tired of jumping through the hoops. And I feel on that. Like, there's only so much you can take. So you got to start telling people how you feel, or else they will continue to run over you and do the things that they've always done, right? So anyhow, in walks Maurice. Now, it's crazy because we were just talking about her being frustrated. Maurice is telling her from the get-go that he ain't come to work. He ain't come to plan. All he's coming for is the conversation and the drinks, all right? So I'm like, at least she knows, right? So, from there, Maurice and Pam, they start the vibe or whatnot. They have a little sidebar conversation and all of that stuff, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So anyhow, we head back over to the hotel where we see Penelope and Andi. So Penelope is pretty much telling her that, Gary did some things to her, and, she actually ended up losing the baby or whatnot, and she wants him to suffer just as he made her suffer, and she really wants him gone, unalived, right? But unfortunately for the law, that's not going to work. So Andi is like, okay, well, at least let me let you call and talk to your brother or whatnot. So now Agent Watt is like, no, that's not going to happen, because we need to make sure that everybody stays safe. And the only way that I can make sure that you stay safe is if he doesn't know that she exists or that you cannot find her, right? So anyhow, Andi is like, I'm not sure if I can withhold this information away from him. Now, Penelope on the other end is like, look, Andi, I know that you love my brother. I love my brother dearly. So all I need you to do is just hold him down, be supportive of him, whatever endeavors he got, just deal with that. And Andi is like, look, this dude is not going to rest until he knows that you're okay. And I honestly feel like somebody needs to let somebody know something, because this dude going to end up, unalived himself, putting himself in harm's way if he doesn't know where his sister is, right? So anyhow, going on from there. Next, we head over to the gym where we see Brother Aaron getting his bench press on or whatnot, and in walks Zach. Now, I don't know how daggone small Atlanta is, at least in Tyler Perry's circle, because it seems like everybody keeps showing up at the same daggone place at the same daggone time, right? And since we're saying that, the guys, they pretty much make up with one another. They joke a little bit with one another. And then, of course, it doesn't start off that way. But eventually, Zach calms down. Aaron is like, let's just talk as men. And I'm glad that these brothers actually come to a point where they can just talk to one another and, in a cool type of way, and just understand that we're in this together. So I was happy to see that they finally, were able to have that discussion, and they sort of joked about, the whole situation, how they were able to, impregnate the same woman at the same daggone time, and it was just crazy. So anyhow, after they dap it up, hug it up or whatnot, Zach leaves and Aaron continues his workout or whatnot, because Zach, lets him know that, hey man, I see that dad bod that you got. So go ahead and get that together. I ain't gonna have to do that much, right? But you definitely have to get your workout on, right? So anyhow, going on from there, we head back over to Sabrina's crib where we see Maurice and Pam still having their conversation, and Pam pretty much asked, Maurice if he wanted to be her, ambassador for, her Roots to Riches brand or whatnot. And it's like, ambassador? Oh, that sounds good, right? And, Maurice is so daggone fake because Because he's talking all this yin yang with Pam, talking about, girl, I'm gonna follow you back. She's talking about, I've already, followed you and all of this good stuff. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So anyhow, when Pam leaves the room, Maurice was like, man, I can't stand that chick, right? And not in those words. And she was like, for real? He was like, yeah, she's too much. And Sabrina's like, what do you mean too much? Like, you're too much. And he was like, well, you can't have too much at one daggone time, right? So anyhow, she was like, look, y'all cool, whatever it is. But she's still frustrated right now of the fact that the sisters did not show up. And then she says she got half a mind to tell them how she's thinking right now. So Maurice was like, ooh, I like this new soprano right here. Go ahead and tell them how you feel, sis. And, I think, at this moment, she really doesn't know how to say what she really wants to say to them because she's too kind and too nice. Sometimes you got to have somebody as your mouthpiece to just put the business out there and stand on business. That isn't Sabrina until old boy comes in, because she dismisses Maurice. And he's like, oh, you sound like you trying to get rid of me. She was like, yeah, my man is coming over. And he was like, okay, well, let me go ahead and grab my stuff. And then they have a little spat or whatnot, and he leaves the room. So anyhow, going on from there, we head over to Karen's new salon where we see her working with a client at the moment, and in walks Pam. So Karen is like, where the heck have you been? Like, you were supposed to be here earlier or whatnot. So Pam is like, look, I had a meeting and I actually found an ambassador for my brand, Roots to Riches or whatnot. And so like, well, that's cool, but you were supposed to be here. Like, your brand is getting in the way. So anyhow, from there, as they're still talking and whatnot, Karen is like, all right, so what happened last night? And, in the previous episode, Pam had conveyed to her that she was interested in Trey, definitely, since, Karen had turned him down or whatnot. So she was like, oh, old boy is fine and all this stuff, whoop, whoop, whoop. And they had, had a wonderful time or whatnot. So Karen is like, well, I'm happy for you. And of course, Pam is like, are you for real? For real? She was like, yeah, all right. So anyhow, while we're talking about Trey, in Wall Street. Now, he's coming to see Pam. Pam is like, so you came up here to see me? He was like, who else, right? And she was like, you were just thinking about me? And she said it twice, right? And it was like, yeah, like, why wouldn't I think about you, right? So I was like, okay, I see what you're doing, Playboy. So anyhow, going on from there, he tells her about, potentially doing samples for her Roots to Riches brand, right? Because his barber gave him this free sample, which eventually led him to come back to buy more product from the barber. And she tells him, like, look, I ain't interested in giving out nothing for free. And then Trey is like, no, for real, shorty, I think if you give this out, you will grow your business. You will get more clientele because the word will spread about your product because you're giving it away. Some people may not use it. They may never use it. They may actually give it away to somebody. But that's just how it works. And then you get word of mouth, and then you get that groundswell, all of that good stuff, right? So it can work. So anyhow, as he's leaving, she thanks him or whatnot. As he's leaving, walking out of the building, she's just staring at him. And Karen is like, hey, Pam. She has to call her name. And I was like, daggone, she in her days, right? So she was like, I was like, come on, man, get to work. I ain't seen nothing. So anyhow, we head back over to the law firm where we see Fatima coming into the conference office where Hayden is at the current moment, right? So when she comes in, and she's talking to him, and he's like, what do you want? And of course, Fatima had to have a little fun with him or whatnot. And she tells him, like, look, I'm just glad that it wasn't me that had to kick your butt this time. And it's like, whatever. There's no need for me to go back and forth with the paralegal, right? And I was like, dad, go on, bro. You don't have to knock her profession. She's trying to grow. So anyhow, he tells her, look, by the end of this situation, I'm going to have Miss Marie eating out of the palm of my hands. So while he's saying all of this shit in it right here, Miss Marie is coming up from behind, walking into the conference room, and Fatima is sitting there like, oh, really? So she ain't forewarned this brother at all, man. So anyhow, going on from there, Miss Marie is like, oh, really? And he was like, oh, Miss Marie. She was like, yeah, you had so much to daggone say, but you didn't have nothing to say when we were off in that daggone courtroom, right? And as a matter of fact, where in the heck is Miss Barnes? So in walks Andi talking about, I'm here, whatnot. So Miss Marie is like, look, if y'all don't get this stuff together, then I'm going to take my business elsewhere. And I'm quite sure that the partners of this firm would not be pleased about that. So y'all need to get it together. Whatever y'all got going on, y'all need to work it out. So anyhow, going on from there. So after she leaves and Hayden leaves, they have a sidebar conversation with one another. Fatima pretty much tells her that she has to head out so she and Zach can choose a nanny. They decided to go that route. So Andy's like, cool. By the way, you forgot to call Sabrina. So she's like, oh, Lord, she's going to be mad at me or whatnot. So she decides to call Sabrina. Sabrina's like, what happened to you? She was like, oh, man, I had so much going on. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And, Sabrina's like, well, that's cool, but I need you to pick up the phone or at least text me back. Let me know what's going down because we need to be here for Karen and whatnot. Now, Andy is like, look, old girl ain't the only one that got stuff going on. Like, I'm over here dealing with this case. I'm trying to deal with this Marie situation. Then potentially I can lose my crib, my car, and all of this good stuff. Like, I got to be a witness. Like, she ain't the only one that got stuff going on. And she needs to let Sabrina know that. And, to a degree she has, but I think she needs to go a little bit deeper when she's ready to reveal that, of course. But she needs to let her know, like, look, I'm going to be here when I can be here. It is what it is. So moving on from there, Sabrina has to get off the phone because there's a knock at the door. It just so happens to be Brother Rich. So Brother Rich is coming in with a bouquet of flowers, and he was like, And I understood what he was saying when he said what he said when he said it, right? So anyhow, he was like, look, you just do it for me, and they go at it. So they kiss and they make their way to the couch or whatnot. And, before he got in there was a little baby shoe or whatnot that she placed up under the pillow. And for some daggone reason, he was able to feel that baby shoe all the way up under that daggone pillow, right? So anyhow, he was like, hey, what's going on? What is this? She was like, oh, that's nothing, and throws it all to the side. So she proceeds to go on and whatnot, but he can't get into it. So she was like, hey, what's going on? Like, why you stopping? And he was like, hey, man, I just got one question. And I was like, uh-oh, here we go. So anyhow, he was like, look, have you been, consistent with your birth control and whatnot? And she was like, for real? So she stops, gets up off this dude, and she was like, look, you know what? I'm tired. Everybody want to rain on Sabrina today. I'm tired of it. So he just so happens to be the recipient of the first get up out of my crib situation. And he was like, for real? And she gets up and leaves because she was like, look, I really don't need you to do what I'm trying to do right now. Because truth be told, you've already told me that you're not interested in what I want. So I'm going another route. That's why I'm having to do these shots and all of this good stuff. And then secondly, Rich, you're not that smart. You don't understand women, bro, because there's no way in the world I would have came in there and asked anything that asinine, knowing that it could potentially mess up what we got going on. Like, you knew you wanted to do what you were trying to do, but now you can't do what you were trying to do. And then you sitting on the couch like, dang. Yeah, you dang right. Daggone it. You don't. He was like, Sabrina, now she gone, dude. He was like, dang. Now get up, man. Just leave. She told you to leave, man. You don't want no more problems, man. So anyhow, going on from there. Next, we head over to Maurice's crib where we see Grayson is over there cooking it up in his kitchen and whatnot. And Maurice comes in screaming like, what the heck are you doing here? He was like, look, I wanted to surprise you. I've cooked. And he was like, I know you did not cook my oxtails, right? And let me go ahead and admit it to y'all first and foremost. I don't even know what oxtails taste like. I've never tried them, right? So I'm just assuming they are great because so many people talk about them, right? But he tells Grayson that you're not supposed to cook them like that. You're supposed to cook them in a crock pot with onions and all of this good stuff so they can just, whatever in your mouth or whatnot. So Grayson took it like he was talking about something sexual. And, he was like, no, I'm not talking about nothing sexual. I'm talking about I'm mad as heck because you don't cook my daggone oxtails and you done did it incorrectly, right? Not only that, but now Grayson is telling this man that, hey, man, I actually reorganized your closet because I'm OCD. And I just had to because I couldn't walk in there and see that, right? So, of course, Maurice is furious at this moment because he was like, it is organized chaos. And, I'm like that to a certain extent. Like in certain areas in my space, like I know exactly where my stuff should be and will be. And then somebody comes in there and moves some stuff. And then you be like, where the heck is my stuff? Well, I didn't know you were going to be able to find it. Yes, I can find it if you don't touch it. If you don't touch it, I can find it. But if you move it, I'm lost, right? So anyhow, Grayson tells Maurice that he's been a little bit rude, right? All I did was, cleaned up your room, tried to make some food for you or whatnot. And, Maurice goes off on him. So Grayson decides to leave. Like, I hope that you have a nice night. Maurice is like, no, I didn't mean it like that. And he was like, yes, you did. And he leaves. So it is what it is, Maurice. You got to deal with the consequences, my brother. So anyhow, going on from there. Next, we head over to see Hayden going over to the hotel room to sit down with Miss Marie or to lay down, right? Because when he gets over there, she got on her little bathrobe or whatnot, chilled out on the bed or whatnot when he knocks on the door. So when he comes in, he's telling her like, look, I apologize about today, about the whole situation at the courtroom. I'm going to make sure that I work this thing out and we're going to win this for you by any means necessary. So then she's sitting there looking at him, not paying any daggone attention to what's coming out of his mouth because he's looking at him up and down. And she's like, you know what? Sometimes you got to pivot. You know what I'm saying? When you make a mistake, you got to do something different. You can't go back to what you were doing before. You got to make what you did before right. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So anyhow, long story short, she was like, so what you going to do about it? So he's feeling what she's feeling, what she's putting down. So he's like, okay, let me show you. Because I can get down with you as well. And I figured he was that type of dude that would do whatever he needed to do to get to the top or put her on top. Whatever it is, right? Whatever it's going to be. So anyhow, he unties her robe and then we see her, with the robe falling down to her ankles or whatnot. So we move on from there. Well, we head back over to Sabrina's crib where we see her on the phone with Karen. Now, Karen is calling her just to see how everything is going with the planning of her baby shower. She wants to make sure that, Sabrina is pretty much over it all because she doesn't want it to be a ghetto situation dealing with Pam or whatnot. And so like, no, I'm good. And don't you worry about nothing that we got going on. Everything is going to be excellent. So don't worry your mind about it. So anyhow, going on from there, we head over to see Zach and Fatima. Now, they are interviewing, individuals for the nanny role. And obviously, at first, it didn't look like it was going too well. Zach was actually eating chips and all types of stuff, almost sleep at one point. So I'm glad to see at the very end of the interview process that they were actually able to get somebody, who they felt comfortable with, who was great with schedules, who was, real big on, going to bed and all of this stuff. And she seemed kind and sweet. But, it almost made me think of that episode of Martin where Martin and Gina needed, somebody to keep the house clean and all of that stuff. So they went through that whole little interview process and they ended up with old girl from the Jeffersons. What's her name? Florence. And, at first she seemed so sweet. She was good, but she was messing up every daggone thing. Every daggone thing in the house, right? So anyhow, I hope this ain't the situation, but it could be because she did tell them that she was real big on schedules, right? So hopefully we'll find out real quick what type of nanny or housekeeper she is, right? So anyhow, going on from there, we head over to Jordan's crib where we see he and his assistant, talking and whatnot. And Jordan is like, look, I need a little drink or whatnot. So he decides to, get something a little bit stronger than what his assistant brought over, that he can take his mind off of everything that he's dealing with at the moment, right? So anyhow, from there, we head over to the club where we see Maurice talking with his friend, the bartender or whatnot. And, he tells him what went down. So the bartender friend is like, okay, so you mean to tell me that Grayson was at your apartment cleaning up, cooked you a meal, and you got pissed? And Maurice is like, well, when you put it that way, it does sound silly, right? And it does sound silly because right now what you're doing, Maurice, is allowing your past to dictate your present. So you can't fully, embrace what you got going on in front of you because you're allowing the situation that went down with Q to go unresolved. You haven't dealt with it yet. So you need to deal with that, and you need to speak it out loud and deal with those situations before you can move forward. And you also need to tell whomever you're dealing with what has transpired in your life that makes you distrust people. These are the things that you got to do if you're trying to build a relationship, Maurice. So anyhow, moving on from there, we head over to Danni's crib where we see Danni and Tony coming in from their date night. They seem like they've enjoyed themselves or whatnot. And, Tony informs Danni that, Tiffany is going to be staying at his mom's crib watching the kids. So, of course, Danni has a problem with that. And for some odd reason, Tony really doesn't understand why she has issue or finds issues with that, right? Because when this joker says, look, Danni, she's the mother of my kids. And I'm sitting up here like, okay, bro, like, I get that. But she can be the mother of your kids staying in a nice hotel. She does not have to stay at your mother's crib. Like, I can see from her vantage point why she feels some type of way. And even as a man, you can sit up here and say all of the things that she wants to hear. At the end of the day, she knows that your ex is staying at your mother's house, a woman that she has yet to meet. So whatever he says right now, like, you're the only one for me and all of this stuff, and you do what you do to make her feel better, to take her mind off of it. At the end of the day, Tony, she's still going to feel a certain way about this situation regardless. And I know some people might say, well, she needs to get over it. Then, they just met. Whoa, they got this relationship, that spans this long and all of this stuff. That's all good. But when you're trying to move on and you're trying to build something new, how does that look when I bring my ex and my current to the cookout? Some people can do that with no problem. But for me, as I stated before, man, I cut stuff off. Like, I don't want no problems. I don't want no headaches. Right now, from what I'm foreseeing, is Tony is creating a big problem down the line. Because what if she starts to get feelings again for this brother? Even though they said it didn't work out initially, well, maybe this time we can get it right. People do that. People do it all the daggone time and then end up either working it out or failing once again. So what if? You know what I'm saying? We got to live in the land of what if, because we've already been there, done that, right? We know each other. We've been together since college and all of that good stuff. So she's the mother of my kids, Daddy. Give a dad. Danni don't give a daggone care. Listen, man, she's a threat. At the end of the day, Tony needs to know and understand that Tiffany will forever be a threat, a potential threat, a strong threat to Danni. All right, leave it alone. So anyhow, from there, we head back over to Jordan's crib where we see he and Ethan still having a little bit of conversation while they're drinking and whatnot. And Jordan receives a phone call from Andi. So he gets up over there and goes to the corner to talk to her or whatnot. She could tell that, he's obviously under, the influence or whatnot. So she was like, look, you need to go ahead and go to bed, settle down. Don't do too much, right? And she tells him that she's going to go to bed as well because she's had a long day. So, of course, while he's over there talking to Andi, Ethan is on the other side mixing up the drink. So he carries the drink over there to Jordan. Of course, Jordan drinks it. He ends up passing out. And then Ethan takes him over to the couch or whatnot. And we see that on the trailer for tomorrow's episode. So we'll talk about that in the trailer breakdown. I will release that tomorrow morning. So be on the lookout for that. Also, be on the lookout for 2 throwbacks from the 90s for Living Single. I have 2 of those episodes dropping tomorrow as well. If you have yet to watch the Different World throwback for today, make sure to go back and look at that. Another episode that I got dropping is Diara from Detroit. I'm so behind. I had them in my vault. Mo got a vault over here. I record stuff, but I try to get the images for them. I just don't like putting them up without the images. Let me know your thoughts. Do you care if I put the images on there or not? Does it make it better for you, or do you just prefer to just hear what's going on? Let me know down in the comments down below. With that being said, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss shit and it that's going down, man. Until next time, I'll see y'all soon. Peace.